And we are chartering new territories and learning new skills. So we're very appreciative also to Bart for putting this class together. For many of us, those who have never did virtual meetings and those who have not used Zoom, obviously there are other technologies available to all of us. So today's session will focus on how to use Zoom to conduct online meetings. So appreciate you all being open and flexible, trying to keep your members connected. It is very important to keep them socially connected, especially for those, and many of us are now asked to be working from home. So I've been in the house for a week. Today I had to go out and took a quick drive just to keep my sanity. But I'm grateful to the virtual meetings that we have been able to conduct this week. So that kept us really connected and socially balanced. So thank you, Bart. I'll give it back to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Wafae. And do I have Daniel Matz on the line? Is he in the meeting? Daniel Matz?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Good to have you here, Daniel. And Daniel will be one of our experts that will be on our panel. He's certainly a member of, for quite a while, an online club, and so he has lots of experience in that area. And Violetta will also be on, Violetta Rios, who's our Region 3 Director. And Violetta, are you on currently? It's kind of hard for me to tell who's on and who's not. Let me look this list here.
No, I texted her, Bart, but she's not here yet.
Okay, well, I'm sure she will be here fairly soon. Where I thought I would start this off is if everybody can go to your window, does everybody find yourself? And you have a window in the upper right-hand side here that has an ellipse, the 3 dots. And you can see you have a variety of different options here at the top of things that you can do. Right now, everyone is muted. And so it's just, and of course, you'll want to unmute yourself before you start speaking. But, and then of course, if you want to mute yourself again, this is one area where you can mute your audio. You could stop your video if you'd like. If you're doing anything, keep in mind on here, if I can see you, which, you know, I cannot see everybody. Some people have their videos blocked and there are a few people who may not be here on video. But you can always stop your video if you want to blow your nose or if you want to get up and go do something without everybody seeing what's going on. Otherwise, if you can see me, you can see everything that I'm doing, even if somebody else is talking and I'm like sitting here going, you know, bored, something, you might want to turn your video off at that point. One of the things that's a great idea is to keep a primary speaker, whoever you want to keep track of, like your timer, you might pin their video so that they're one of the primary videos that you can always keep track of. So you've got a pin and unpin video, including pinning your own video of yourself. Then you can also rename yourself if you want to rename yourself here. There's a place where you
I'm sorry, where is that pin?
Oh, Janice,
how do we pin?
so that would be, Janice, it's up at the top. If you go to the very top where you have the ellipse, the three periods, do you see that?
No, I don't have 3 periods, but I do have, let's see, your client connection. Whoop.
Bart, would it be helpful if you share your screen so everybody knows what you are referring to?
Go ahead and do that, sure.
Thank you.
Bart, I'm on an Android phone and my list of icons, including the ellipsis, is on the bottom.
Oh, okay.
And I have to touch my image in order to bring that.
Have to touch your image.
So if I touch
whoops.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that your screen? I have.
My screen.
Yeah, I've got them across the bottom, but I don't have 3 dots. I don't have an ellipse.
3 dots show up when you hover over the picture you want to pin.
Go back to mute.
Well, and some of this will be described in the program that we're going to be doing. And there's going to be a lot of resources that you can also find on the Toastmaster District website on where things are for different instruments. Now, one thing I'll always recommend, since we're recommending Zoom as the primary tool that you guys might want to use, is that Zoom has many dozens of videos that can answer every single question you may have. So that's one of the things I will refer people back to so that we can have them all get a chance to find answers even after this call. And I'm recording this call as well. So what I thought I'd do is just start off by describing a few things that you'll want to know about. In this particular program here, at this point, everyone should see a little film strip. Does everybody see a film strip? You'll have like 3 or 4 people that you can see at this point, or is it just the program, the PowerPoint program?
I can see 4.
Okay. So you could pin your own video or your own, your own video on here so that you could be one of those 4, one of the primary ones. And you can choose at the top of the strip, they've got several options. One is where you can put the strip. You can make it disappear. You can have it so that only the speaker, which is me at this time, shows up, speaker view. Then you can put it on the thumbnail video where you can see thumbnails, that's that strip. And then you could also put on, for the active speaker, active person, that would be me at this point, is that large box where I'm the only one seen other than the PowerPoint program. So at this point, do y'all see the PowerPoint program and do you see a picture of me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get started, but you can move that strip around. So you can move it, you can clip it to the top of your computer or the bottom or the left or the right. So if you wanted to move anything out of the way, you could move it very easily. So this is something that I would practice doing on a regular basis, getting used to how you can adjust your screen so you can see things. So I created just a little bit of a, probably about a 10-15 minute PowerPoint program, although I wanted to give a chance for us to answer questions as we go about the specific issues that are on the screen. I hope to catch just about every issue someone could come up with, but then we will have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end as well. And we will have Violetta on here as well as Daniel as our 2 experts who've been doing this for well over a year and have lots of expertise in this area. So let's go ahead and get started. And then as you have questions, DJ, if you would unmute and let me know that, that would be great. So.
Do you want me to do it just every question, or do you want me to kind of, I mean, I don't want to keep,
I think so, but at this point, people may have been asking questions before we even get started, and I'd like it to be about what we're talking about right now, and then if we haven't covered their questions throughout the presentation, then we'll cover that question. So
that's what I'm hoping people will do, is just kind of let you get through your presentation and then directing you.
So in other words, hold off on your questions because everyone has different levels of experience and different questions. You came to this meeting that you wanted answers. Hold off on those questions. You can write them somewhere, write them down somewhere, but don't block up the chat room if you would, please. That would be helpful. So the reason why we started all of this is because, as you know, our meeting options have changed drastically, whereas we were all meeting together and it was a different way of connecting. Today, the only option is if we're going to connect at all as a club, we have to connect online. So helping clubs understand how do you do and run a Toastmasters meeting with all the protocols that we have in this format, because some things that we were doing in the live meetings worked well and some things just do not. And so we're going to work out a lot of these issues on this call and then leave it to a lot of questions that you guys may have afterwards. Our main job of doing this tonight is that we want to see this as a great opportunity. I know some of our Toastmasters, and you may even know some of them, have been reticent and reluctant to get onto their computers and utilize their computers, which of course with the new Pathways program, it's pretty much one which you become great friends with your computer and working online. And this may help to encourage those individuals to get more comfortable within this environment. So essentially we're turning these lemons into lemonade. Plus this is the wave of the future. So for anyone who's planning to be around in Toastmasters 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're going to probably see a lot of online meetings and a lot more work online and in many areas, including mentoring your Toastmaster. So if you've got someone in your club that you're mentoring, you might want to see what they're looking at on their screen or let them see what you're helping them with. And this is a great tool that you can use to do that. So some of the initial decisions that we all have to make as clubs is decide what kind of virtual meeting software to use. Obviously, here in the district, we're recommending one of the best ones that are out there, which is Zoom. But there are, gosh, 20, 30 or more available out there, and 5 primary ones that people do tend to use. But we're going to focus mostly on Zoom today, and most of the other platforms that you would see out there also have many of these same tools. They just sometimes are in different places. So what we're recommending is to find what will work best for your budget. Now, Zoom has a free program, and as well as some of these other softwares that can be free. If you get the Pro account, which is what I would recommend for each of the clubs, the Pro account is $15 per month. If anything, you might get it for 1 or 2 months. I don't know how long we're going to be in this situation, but essentially you can do this month by month. And some members are already doing this where they just split the costs among their members. But the reason why I encourage people to have the Zoom Pro account is because you have some extra tools that you can use, plus you get more than just the 40-minute limit with the free program. So if you sign up for a free Zoom account, you get a 40-minute program. Now, I got a great idea from one of my Toastmaster friends who suggested, well, why don't you put 2 of the 40-minute programs together? And I thought that actually works, although you cannot run them concurrently. But you could run a 40-minute meeting, or let's say an hour and a half meeting for 40 minutes, take a little bit of a break, 5-minute, 10-minute break, and then start the new 40 minutes meeting at that point. So you could run completely free on Zoom without necessarily paying the $15 per month. But I do recommend the Zoom Pro account because it does offer a lot of extra alternatives. Now, another thing you could do that is more limited is you could share someone else's Pro account. I know in one of my clubs, 2 of us have a Pro account for our own businesses, but obviously for a 1 hour or an hour and a half meeting that we're doing for our club, it's usually not during that particular time where we might be doing something at work. Now, that may be different for different people here, but you could do that where your sergeant at arms could be responsible for making sure that that account is set up so that we have our meetings planned on their account for a specific time each week. So that's another thing one can do. But again, I think that would be more your president or your sergeant at arms responsibility. And then the last thing before we take some questions on all this is if you're going to use online meetings, these virtual meetings, you want to make sure you've got your most up-to-date tools available. And I know all of us differ as far as what tools we have. Now, I know that with my laptop that I'm using right now, it's a MacBook, and it's a MacBook that's 2016. And the software I've got on it is too old to use the new virtual backgrounds that you can use on Zoom, where you could have a different background than your natural one. But another thing you could do is you could put up a green screen, which is only named for the typical color that people would be, on your skin and your hair, you're never likely to have green. So a green screen makes sure that that person wouldn't disappear into the background when it puts something on the back on that green screen. But you can use other colors. They just should be solid colors and something that is not something you're wearing. Like if you're wearing something of the same shade, like if I had a blue background, my shirt would disappear and all you would see is a floating head. And so that could be a little disconcerting. So you might want to make sure to play with this, which is another reason I want you guys to encourage everyone to get a Zoom account for free, because then you can go on there and you have 40 minutes to play with it, to bring someone else onto the call, to practice your speech, to mentor somebody. You can do this with these virtual tools where you don't have to go and meet with somebody in person, and it's a great way to get this done. So, but you do want to make sure you've got the most up-to-date. Like we have some people who may not have a computer. If they've got a desktop, they may not have a camera because some of the older models don't have the camera. All laptops, certainly in the last couple of years, all have a little camera right here, usually right at the top, which you'll want to know, where is that camera lens? Because you want to look into the lens when you're talking to people. So have an up-to-date camera. If you don't have one and want to buy a separate camera, little cameras today are incredibly cheap. You can get one for $10 and put it on a little tripod, and you've got a perfectly up-to-date and good camera that probably is better than the one you have on your computer. Probably not better than the one you might have on your iPhone 11, which is the newest, or one of the newest phones, but it's a great camera that's even better than what I've got on my computer. But you can also buy a mic. I've got a little mic that I can put on my lapel that's got a wire. Now I can only go 3 feet away from my computer though with that mic. But that, if I wear that mic, one of the advantages of using that over my computer is that if someone is typing, you can sometimes hear them typing. You can hear other noises, and it's less likely you can hear those noises if they have a lapel mic. So you might get a lapel mic. I bought one for $12. That works really well. The wireless ones are much more expensive, and depending on how much you're going to get into this, you may or may not want to consider that. But this is a good time, DJ, to answer some questions in this area. So do you have some questions relevant to these areas?
Well, just the only question was, does Zoom offer a discount for Toastmasters? And Violetta answered that in the chat. So I just wanted to see that everyone, no, we don't have a discount. Danny did note that Zoom has been permitting longer meetings lately, because we did mention that Zoom cuts their meetings off after 40 minutes, but apparently, Danny, I don't know if you want to expand on that, but I guess they're allowing meetings to go longer on the free account, so that's nice.
Yeah, Danny, would you like to share that? He's still on mute. So we can't hear Daniel, so I don't know if he's going to comment or not.
Danny Babick.
Hello, howdy. We had our meeting, and when it got close to 40 minutes, I got a message that said, as a gift from Zoom, we've removed the 40-minute limit. When we finished the meeting, they said, if you go ahead and schedule your next meeting now, it also will not have the limit.
Wow.
So I went ahead and scheduled a repeating meeting, and I guess we'll find out. Supposedly there's no 40-minute limit for the next meeting on Thursday, and we'll see if that continues.
And I will say, I have tried it last week and on a 40-minute call, and they let us keep going. And it's like, oh, I thought we'd be just cut off, but they didn't. So maybe that's just a rumor anyways, but I'm glad they're expanding that. That's certainly helpful in this crazy period. DJ, other questions? Thank you,
We
Dan.
do. Jean Ramsey has a question about the lapel mics.
Ah.
Well, the one that you bought, Bart. So it pins on, but how does it plug into your computer? Is it just a headphone jack, or?
It's a wired, so it just like with my headset, like my telephone headset, it plugs right into my computer, and it's got a 3-foot length of wire, but it would be wired, that particular one.
Right. So standard headphone jack.
It's not a headphone. It's just a lapel mic. It's just a little mic that clips to your lapel.
No, but I mean how does it plug into your computer? I mean.
Oh, mine has just a little simple plug on the side for my earphones. Like if I wanted to put in earphones into my computer, I can hook them into my computer directly. Everyone has different systems, so only you would know what options you would have. So if you are going to buy one, make sure that that plug has an audio entry for where you're going to use it. So that's a good point, Gene. So make sure that whatever you buy for your computer would match the equipment that you're going to be able to use for your computer. I know that like the very new Apple laptops would not have the ability, I think, to plug it in. And I think that may be what Gene is talking about. That with a brand new or recent laptop, you may not be able to plug in something that you buy in online. So unless you get an adapter, I'm pretty sure Apple sells adapters, which they almost always have. So other questions, DJ?
Yes, Wafae would like to address the discount.
Okay.
Go ahead, Wafae.
Okay, so first of all, there's no discount that has been negotiated with Zoom via the Toastmasters headquarters that we're aware of. Secondly, this is something that clubs might consider, especially if you want to retain your members. If they're traveling a lot, if they have to stay home for whatever reason, they can always connect with the club during the club meetings virtually. And if they decide to go that route, rather than subscribing monthly, if you have an annual subscription, I believe it's $12.99 versus $14.99 a month. So there's a little discount there if you choose to go with the annual subscription.
Great. Thank you, Wafae. DJ, other questions?
We are having a lot of chatter about the background images. And so maybe we could experiment with that a little bit. Danny, you seem to.
Okay, we will get to that. So we'll
Okay.
hold off on that then. So I know that there's quite a few people who want to know about things like that. And Zoom has a great short video on exactly how to do that. So it's very simple as well. You just go onto zoom.com and say virtual backgrounds, and they've got an entire video that will help you with that as well. But we'll go through it as well. So thank you for that. Any questions about setting up an account?
I had a thought, Bart, and I don't know if this is kosher, but here's a suggestion I heard to get around that 40-minute cutoff is if you have, you know, an hour or even longer meeting, pick a convenient time to build in a break and have everybody log off and log on to a new session. So,
yes,
you know, go
I had suggested that a little bit earlier.
I arrived late, and I'm so sorry.
That's
but
okay.
I just recently heard about this, and I'm like, well, you know, it's a little unkosher, but it, you know, for the time being, it might be a workaround that is palatable.
And Jean, one thing that someone had commented on is that Zoom actually now is allowing people for much more. They're not limiting it to the 40 minutes anymore, so that people can just continue using it for what they need for their meetings. So especially if they set for an ongoing meeting, they're not going to set that limit. So DJ, other questions?
Yeah, you had mentioned that there were other abilities that came with a membership, a paid membership. Are some of them the ability to mute people or pin people or raise your hand or anything that would be useful in a meeting?
Definitely. That's what we want to do, is to keep in mind that there's some very useful tools that you'll want to use in your club meeting that come with the Pro program. So that's definitely something that's helpful.
Can you call out specifically which ones are useful?
I can't actually, on this call, I don't have that list in front of me. So but if you go onto zoom.com, they have a simple comparison list where you can see the difference between the free account versus the Pro account. And then you can make a decision as to whether or not your club needs those particular tools or not. You can get by without them, I'll say that. There's always workarounds for everything. So
is it zoom.com or zoom.us?
I think it's zoom.us is what it is. So, but I believe if you're in the US, it definitely, if you put zoom.com, I think it pushes you to that zoom.us. So. Great. Any other questions in that area, DJ? I know Carol had her hand.
Well, I just want to remind you to, if we're starting to hear a lot of background noise, to mute everyone. Okay. Because we're having some people chat that it's distracting. I don't have a question about setting up the account, but I do have a question about scheduled meetings. There's a question from Sally saying that she is having trouble getting her people to log on due to the volume, I guess, that Zoom is experiencing. Is anyone else experiencing something similar, that members aren't able to log into meetings? I haven't experienced that.
I have not experienced that, and I've been involved with many meetings. Has anyone experienced that on here? You'd have to unmute yourself this time. But
is there an error screen that they're getting?
Sally?
Yes. Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. They're getting all kinds of weird things like, this is going to damage your computer, trying it on the phone, the iPad, and the computer. And I'd never had that trouble until today when I'm getting that report. And I didn't know if it was due to volume or if it's just their server or some limitation of their computers and so forth. But I'd never heard that before, and I've been using it for 5 years or 4, I don't know, time flies.
And you can go onto Zoom and go onto their support and ask their support people if there's something that they're aware of that's going on. But okay. I've not encountered anything like that with my phone. I haven't tried it on my iPad in a while, but it worked fine when I did it with my iPad a couple months ago. But my phone works just fine.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I had never had a problem until today. So it may actually be people, and we're way out in the country. It may have to do with their servers or something. So, okay, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, if there's not any other questions in this area, we'll just move on. And DJ, if you will just mention if there is anything.
I just want to ask, are we going to be talking about breakout rooms? Is that on your agenda?
It isn't, although I can talk about them. I do know how to use breakout rooms and think they're great for certain things, especially after a meeting where if your members want to chat, or let's say you want to chat to a visitor comes to your club, they come to the meeting's now over, but you want to chat with them online without setting up a separate meeting, you could say, hey, can we go into a breakout room and have a talk? And I can tell you more about our club and more about Toastmasters. And that's something that could be an option, is using those breakout rooms, which then, but of course that is usually the meeting planner, and you would have to have that person who's starting the meeting. Somebody's got some background noise, so let me just go ahead and turn everybody on mute except for me, and then you can unmute yourself. Let's see, mute. Okay. So everybody should be muted at this point. If you do happen to notice background music or noise of any sort, make sure you always put your phone on mute immediately. So if it was not on mute, and I bring this up as in a regular meeting. So if you're in a regular meeting and you happen to have your phone off of mute, be very prepared if some noise comes up, an emergency vehicle comes by, mute yourself very quickly. Otherwise, you might just have everybody on mute until you call on that person, and then they should know how to quickly unmute. So it's a good skill to have, muting yourself and unmuting yourself, as well as starting and stopping your video. So, but in terms of the breakout rooms, I can answer more questions at the end about the breakout rooms, but generally the person who is the host of the meeting can assign a co-host who that person, like if I wanted to be in a breakout room with someone, I say, hey, can you make me a co-host? I'd like to use a breakout room as we continue after the meeting. And of course, if the host closes out the meeting, you have no options except to start a separate meeting. And I might suggest that too, is just say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about our club a little bit more. Can we meet after this? And I'll set up my own meeting, which you can do very easily, and then send an invite to that person or another person or a multitude of people, and have your own meeting at that point. So, which are now not limited to 40 minutes. Great. So if there's not other questions, and one of the things I wanted to let you guys know is that there's going to be a lot of resources available on the Toastmaster District website about how to use these tools and little ins and outs. I've even got a sheet that I'm going to send to everybody who was in this meeting of what I've put together. It has, at this point, well over 50 different pointers you may want to know when having a meeting on Zoom. And you'll want all your members to know these things too. Such as, remember, people can see you at any time, unlike in a live Toastmaster meeting where you're, generally people don't necessarily see your face unless you're sitting around a table together. But usually we don't see our faces constantly through the meeting, but on this one, that option is always available unless you stop your video. But there was some things like District 52 and a couple other districts have come up with great little tools like this one here that you'll see on how to join a Zoom meeting, where even if you're not a member, how do you do that? But one thing you could do is download Zoom, number one, sign in and join, number 2, 3, 4. So it just walks you through it with this simple little diagram. We'll have several of those on the district website that will be very useful for your members that you can encourage them to use as resources. Let's see. Now I want to spend a little bit of time talking about different ways we can enhance our meetings. So one thing, and I just mentioned this a little earlier, is you might want to, once the meeting starts, you might want to mute everyone except the essential people that are speaking. And you can have the host assign a co-host who would be in charge of, and this could be your sergeant at arms, let's say, in charge of unmuting people when they get called on, and they can do that as a co-host or a host, or you encourage your members to learn how to quickly unmute yourselves so they don't start speaking and then they just talk like that and you can't hear them. And then everyone's trying to signal them, hey, unmute yourself. Now, so unmute speakers quickly. Turn that camera off only occasionally. I would prefer in a meeting that you be able to see everybody unless they specifically turn it off for just a moment to run off to the bathroom or to blow their nose or whatever it is that they want to do. And so never forget, people can see you. So if you're in the meeting and you're looking bored, or people can see when you're doing other things, they can tell you're not paying attention. So never forget, everyone can see you. So any questions about these particular meeting enhancers? And I'll talk about a few more in just a moment. So DJ, any questions here?
We're good so far.
Great. A few more enhancers. One is position your camera for the best of views. So one of the things, it's like I have some people who they would be talking in the Toastmasters meeting like this, and you guys can see the problem with that. Also having lights.
Bart, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just got a whole slew of hands raised. So I think.
I'll go back. Okay.
All right. So Betty, Daniel, Raymond, and Fiona have all raised their hands.
Okay.
Yeah, Bart, I just have questions about logistics of a club getting a paid membership to Zoom, and how do you have somebody host a meeting? Like, how do you designate who that host is, and how they control the meeting, and how they assign a co-host? Is it the same person every meeting? Is it like the presiding officer? How do you logistically handle that?
Great question, Betty. Actually, what you would do is have the person who typically sets up the meetings is going to be the host. You could make that your sergeant at arms. It could be your club president. So you can make that anyone. And when the meetings are set up, you can actually then encourage them to go ahead and choose somebody who can be a co-host, one or two. Or once you start the meeting, you can assign co-hosts. So like I could go to your picture and go up to the top and say, make a co-host. And so I can assign you as a co-host, let's say, so that you would have the ability to have some of these controls as well. So I don't know how many co-hosts one can have, but I know you can have at least two. So there may be an unlimited number of co-hosts who can have control of this as well. But the host is usually the person who sets up the meeting, goes on there and registers it and gets it on the schedule. So.
Bart, may I suggest another option?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Our club decided to have an email address for the club, Toastmaster Lakeline at gmail.com, for instance. And then we shared that login information with all club officers, because sometimes you might not have the sergeant at arms attending or whomever is designated. So if you give that access to all your club officers, at least one of them should be able to start the meeting, host the meeting, and make others co-hosts or even hosts.
And that's one of the reasons why I like to set it up so that people can be on the meeting before the host is even on. Because if I had done that tonight where you guys are sitting in a waiting room, then you would just be sitting in this quiet room waiting for somebody to let you enter the meeting. Because there is a way to control who can enter the meeting before it even starts. I can also, as the host, or even I think a co-host can do the same thing, can boot people out of the meeting or completely, eliminate them. So if you had somebody who was, let's say, a troublemaker, who happened to enter into your meeting, who may not be a club member, you can control who gets to be in your club meeting. The reason why I bring this up is because some of you may put your meetings on your website where it say, hey, we're doing our meetings online, come and join us. If you're a guest, please do that. But you could get all sorts of people joining you who see that information. And if you have people you don't want on there, you can block them. That's one thing you can do. And if they come into the meeting, you could actually control who gets into the meeting if you have that waiting room. I chose not to do the waiting room tonight so everybody could start early. But notice when you got on, you thought, oh, wait a minute. I thought the meeting was at 4 o'clock and it's 5 minutes still and all these people are talking. It's like, so it was confusing to some people who didn't understand it. Other comments or questions?
That's just like a real Toastmasters meeting. We all mill around and talk beforehand.
Exactly, which is not a bad thing. Checking in with people, connecting socially. That's always having time for that is a great thing to do in your meetings.
Bart, can you rephrase? Can you summarize the options to remove someone again? I missed it.
Well, there are options for booting someone out of a meeting. It doesn't happen very often, but I was thinking if you're going to post this onto your website, it's true that anyone who goes to your website could see this and join into your meeting. And so that's one of the reasons why you may want to have a waiting room, and you can see who's in your waiting room, and then you can decide, do you want to allow this person in a meeting? So that's another way to.
So you're saying after they enter the meeting, there's no way to remove them, right?
No, there is as well. I've not actually done that, but you can go to you can go to Zoom. Would somebody who's got the music on, please mute yourself? Thank you. So you can actually physically boot someone out. I have yet to do it, but I know that's one of the powers you can do on there, and there's a little video on that on Zoom as well. So, but that's an option. I didn't plan to get into that sort of thing today, but that's an option should that come up.
Bart, Jean would like to weigh in.
Yes.
Jean, go ahead.
Thanks. It was taking me a moment to unmute myself. So thinking about what Betty asked, like who's in charge, who should lead, and building a little bit on what Wafae said about having one account for a club, I would be an advocate for bringing people up, showing them how to lead, and then rotating leaders so that each person can individually gain the skills that it requires to host a webinar. So it's, you know, more than anything, this has been kind of crazy for us, right? We've had to reschedule area contests and figure out what we're gonna do, and it's been kind of nuts, but it's also in a lot of ways provided us with some fresh opportunities for growth.
And Jean, something I'll add to that too is that if it's my account and you get, I'll say, Jean, why don't you run the meeting? So here's my account information, and I let Jean get on there. The moment she gets on there, it will actually be my name on there. So everyone will think, oh, that's Bart, and it's actually Jean. But that's why you can change your name very easily. Everybody can change your name, which is a great thing, because you could go, let's say for instance, you're recording your meeting and you don't want people to know, like some people are very private and they say, I don't want to be a part of this recording though. Well, you could change the name that's on your screen. You could also, you could have like no name on there if you wanted. You could use somebody else's name or your initials. You also can just not have your video on. So that's another option that people can use. They give you some options. Also, another great thing about renaming yourself, and I'm going to rename myself. Let's say, for instance, I'm the Toastmaster, so I might change that on screen. So I say, you know, Bart is now the Toastmaster. So if you see now, if you can see me, you'll see down at the bottom it says Bart equals Toastmaster. You could have timer, the WAG, different roles, although it's limited to how many characters. So again, play with this, but come up with a system where you can have each role player have their name up there. So now, of course, it should also be on the agenda, which you could actually be looking at your agenda and be a part of this meeting. You just don't have the meeting on full screen, so you can see other things on your computer. So you could have your agenda up on your computer as well as being able to see the meeting. Or if I was the evaluator, I could be typing up my evaluation of the speaker that I'm watching. I can watch the speaker, but still type at the same time. So there's ways to do things like that. So other questions about meeting enhancers at this point?
Raymond has had his hand raised.
Raymond. Unmute.
I can't unmute him. You've got to do it because
Raymond, you'll have to unmute yourself if you want to share something. So you do have that power. So, and while we're waiting on Raymond, the other 4 meeting enhancers I brought up was make sure your camera is positioned for best view. So you want to make sure, you know exactly where the camera is pointing and decide, if you're talking over here, or if you were moving and you moved out of this frame, you got to know where your camera space is. So frame your face sort of at the center of the camera, but know how to adjust your camera in every way. Another thing is eliminate intrusive noise. We've had some of that on the computer. Generally, if I don't have this program on, where you're seeing this mostly, I can see wherever the noise is coming from because it will light up their box. And that is like, oh, noise is coming from that person. But in this case here, everyone should be muted until you're called on or you want to make a comment. Another thing, adjust lighting so it's just right. I call it the Goldilocks thing because you want to have the right amount of lighting. If I put too much lighting on myself, that's what it would look like, and it could be annoying both to me as well as to other people. Deciding on how many lights you need on you for good distribution so you don't get shadows. You don't want lighting behind you. That can be a problem as well, because then it will make it harder to see your face. And if someone cannot see you very clearly, and of course you can see yourself, so you can tell what you see is what they see, you want to make sure you've got the right amount of lighting to show what you want to show to people as much as possible. So find just the right amount of lighting, and then eliminate any background distractions. I'm in my study, the TV's on in the other room, and so you could hear other people or the TV unless I had that door closed. So I would go ahead and close the door, get rid of the pets. I was in a meeting yesterday where the Toastmaster started off, and the moment she started speaking, her dog started barking. And the dog wouldn't stop barking, but you couldn't mute her because she's the Toastmaster opening up the meeting. So that was a problem that no one had thought about. So since we're all at home, there are some distractions you just can't get rid of. If you got kids, they may be coming in and say, hey, I need a glass of milk or something, and are unaware that you're on this meeting. You might have to mute yourself, perhaps even turn your camera off and go get them what they need and then come back to the meeting if you're not the speaker. So any questions on these enhancers?
Bart?
Okay.
Bart?
Yes, Wafae.
Someone is asking if you would go over renaming or put in your title, please.
Oh, renaming. Okay, so you can go back to on mine, you go to the little ellipse, the 3 little dots up at the top, and you've got an option that does say rename. I can actually, as the host or as a co-host, rename anyone. So I could go in there and change up everyone's name and say, okay, this person's the timer, this person's an evaluator, this person's speaker 1. I could actually go in there and put their first name and their title, which can be a fun thing to do. So that's something you can do as well. But you can play with this, and that's why I also encourage you to get your own account. These are easy things to find on your screen. You just have to get to your screen and learn what things are. So, and we have some tools on the district website that also show you where these are. And you can also go to Zoom, and they have little videos that show you exactly what you're looking at on your screen and what you can do and where you can do it. Like on mine, I have a few more controls as the host that you would probably never see. Different sharing options that you don't have. I can annotate things, add to things. I can poll people and run a poll, and which some clubs could do for voting. It's a little more complicated, I think, than some of the other voting ideas, but you could poll people and see, who do you think is the best speaker? Here's the 3 people you can choose from. You poll them. Now, of course, I would do it anonymously, because otherwise, if you don't, you're going to get the poll and show exactly what percentage each person got, and everyone can see that. So unless you make it private. So there's options like that. But polling is an option as well for when you're the host on a pro program. So other questions or comments before we get into meeting etiquette?
Okay, Yulriki, did you have a question? And I see Joseph has his hand raised as well.
So Nikki, if you want to speak now, just unmute yourself and go ahead. Anyone who's going to comment, if you don't have any noise in the background, go ahead and unmute yourself now.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, this is
We
great.
all can. Mm-hmm.
So you did see the hand raising thing? I just was testing that.
Yes,
so
yes.
I'm not able to change the camera setting, unfortunately, the way it's set up in this room, because this is for classroom instruction starting next week. So I have to speak with my other part to see if we can have another camera over this. So yeah, thank you.
It's a good point to make.
I'm learning. I'm trying to take this all in. Thank you so much.
Sure. That's why you can practice before you get into a meeting, to practice what you're going to look like, what options, what's going to be in your background, what your lighting is. And when you get on, always test your video and your audio. They have a little test you can do that's easily, everybody has control over that, and they'll do a quick audio or visual, and you see, can you see them? And then they'll do a quick audio, and they'll ask you to say something, and they'll play it back. And if you can hear yourself, everyone can hear you.
Okay, so the audio comes through okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
What are jazz hands?
Oh, am I not next?
The jazz hands? Oh, like that? Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about jazz hands in a bit.
Bart, Ernest asked about the polling, if that can be used for open-ended questions. You might.
It can, if you want to do a poll of people, either quietly or not, and know what percentage of people in your club want to vote on something, like in a club meeting, that's a great tool to use. And again, they have videos on polling. I'm not going to be able to get too much into that in this call because we're going to have so many questions, but polling is something that some clubs may want to use if you have the pro version, and you can do that, and there's some great videos again on Zoom that tell you exactly how to poll, and it's very easy. It's not difficult. It just takes some practice. Other questions?
I think we're good for
Okay.
now.
Wonderful.
Well,
Let's go through some meeting etiquette. So Toastmasters has lots of different etiquette rules, and each club sometimes develops their own rules. One of the big ones we have in Toastmasters is always making sure that the speaking area is never empty. Well, that's going to be a little more challenging in this particular setting, but obviously it's never going to be totally empty, but the person who is speaking should be the one who is mainly being seen. So you might want to have all your people get there early and know how to put it in the mode that's going to be best for your meeting. And generally the best mode to have it in is where you want to look at everybody, so versus just the individual speaker. But when the meeting starts, you want to be sure you have the primary speaker is the main picture you can see. So arrive early and prepare before you get in about your sound, your video, your background, your lighting. Make sure it all is in good working order and you look the way you want to look and sound the way you want to sound. I know that some people, they do clapping. If you get everybody doing that, that can be very annoying. Now, I have had some people do it like quietly like this, but then again, it's so quiet that you could just go ahead and acknowledge them through the video. Jazz hands. Now, if you can only see 4 people up there, obviously you're not going to see everybody clapping, but that's just a way of just acknowledging for people. So now there may be other ways. So if you guys have other ways, bring that up. We'll bring that up in just a moment. So, but one of the ways I'm suggesting is jazz hands. Now, you also don't want to be talking to other people, although like Betty's in the room with someone else and she and Jeff could be just talking. But again, your attention would not be on the group at hand. But also don't talk over other people, which this is the reason why we have everybody on mute, because the temptation is for everybody to want to jump in there and say something, and that will be a bit too confusing. Always be willing to mute yourself when you're not speaking. I know a lot of people are a little uncomfortable with putting themselves on mute, but always, you can just instantly turn yourself off of mute as well. So, but mute yourself because you never know when some sounds might come up that you don't want people hearing. And then don't multitask. Now, there are times where it is applicable to multitask, such as if you're the evaluator. You're obviously going to be taking notes in some way while you're actually paying attention to the speaker. But other multitasking would be don't answer personal phone calls or check your email while you're in a meeting, no matter how bored you are. So, and believe me, I've been tempted. But in our Toastmasters meetings, that would be considered rude. You want to give people full attention. A few more etiquette things, and then we'll take questions and comments. Remember, it's all about the eye contact. So, and know where your camera is, because you got to know where you're going to be looking. I know when I do some recordings, like with my phone, the camera's either going to be on this side or it's going to be on this side. So if I'm looking in the center, I'm not actually looking at people. But my camera is over here. I would want to turn my head a little bit, or make sure I'm looking at that part of my phone here versus looking on this side of my phone, if I've got it turned landscape-wise. So now if it's turned vertically, it's a very different situation. Again, practice this stuff. Another thing to keep in mind is people can see in the meeting, so you don't want to be looking bored, or rolling your eyes, doing things that you don't want people to see. They can always see that. So put on your best style and always smile. So it never hurts to be smiling during a meeting unless someone is talking about something very grave. Next thing is give your speaker your full attention. Make sure your speaker view is on. So use that speaker view, because during your meetings, you're mostly just looking at one person and paying attention to one person. So, and then be aware of chat room activity. I'd encourage most clubs to have your chat room open on the side so that you can tell if you want to comment to somebody, it'd be an easy way for them to keep up with it as well. So now we have some time to take some questions on etiquette or comments. And Daniel and Violetta, if y'all want to bring up some feedback too in these areas, feel free to jump in here. Any questions, DJ?
Well, I think we're okay with that so far, although Marva has asked if we need to have the pro account to get a virtual background, and that I'm not sure. I think you might, so you might want to speak to that. Do you know?
I believe you have to have the pro account for that option. Now, I'm not absolutely sure because things are always changing too, so they may change certain things.
No.
But always check. If you have a regular account, go on there and look at your video. There's a little arrow next to your video where you would turn your video off. Go to the arrow instead and look at your options. And if in your options it says virtual as an option, actually, no, I have pro on both of these accounts, so I only know from a pro perspective, so I can't say.
It's available for free.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was about to say, any of you who don't already have it, you can check now. So great, it is available for free. And you can go on other websites and choose backgrounds. There's a website called Canva, like Canvas, but canva.com, and they have lots of free virtual backgrounds that you can use, even moving things, like a world that's turning, or the universe, or the earth that's doing all sorts of interesting things, people exercising behind you, or dancing. Now keep in mind, if you've got movement going on behind you, that's not a good thing to have in the Toastmasters meeting. But this is one of the things you can use for a green background, a yellow background, a red background, so that if you're the speaker, you could change the colors of your virtual background to let someone know where the timing is. And it's a quick and easy way to do that. Other questions?
Bart?
Yes.
It's not a question, it's just a recommendation. So I like to demonstrate to the viewers that I'm standing up right now, so I can use my body movements and not slouch while I'm sitting down, or using my index fingers, which happened during our club meetings. People, during their table topics presentation, they were really playing with their face without being aware of that, and it was really distracting. So I recommend, if you could, angle your camera so it could at least capture the top part of your body, so you can have that energy when you're presenting and use your body movements.
Great, thank you, Wafae. Other questions and comments about meeting etiquette? And we'll have plenty of time to ask other questions at the end of the presentation too, when we get out of this. So yes.
Can you repeat the website again for the virtual background?
Oh, it's called Canva, like Victor A, canva.com.
Okay.
And they've got lots of free artwork that one can use that's specifically, a lot of it is very compatible to Zoom. Great. All right, well, we'll move on because we'll have plenty of time for questions, so don't worry about that. A couple things too, let's see here. Some troubleshooting areas. If you have an unstable or weak Wi-Fi connection, always be prepared to, if you've got your phone, have Zoom on your phone, have Zoom on your tablet. So if you're on your laptop and you've got a weak connection, you could turn and go to your phone, which would probably have a better connection. Another thing you could do is try an Ethernet connection, which would be a direct wired connection into your computer. So if you can go directly from what your internet source is, your right into your computer, you're going to get the strongest signal. So that's something you could try as well. But be careful if you go onto your phone and you're on your computer, you could get double audio, an echo sound, and we'll get into that in just a moment of how to deal with that. We've already talked a lot about the virtual background issues, but keep in mind, like for me, I can't get it on this operating system I have on my computer, although I can use it easily on my phone. So you guys will be able to tell very quickly whether or not you can access it, because it will tell you you don't have the right operating system for it, or you'd need to upgrade to be able to use virtual. Otherwise, it'll just automatically show you how to do it. For the echo, this is something I found online that can be a big problem during a meeting. You're talking and suddenly it's just echo, 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 and every word you say is echoed, and it's like, oh no, what's going on? It's awful to listen to. And it means that a participant either has got both their computer and their telephone in audio active mode, where you can hear from both, so both the microphones are on. Bad thing to do. Turn the microphone off from at least one of them. Or like in, let's say, Jeff and Betty's situation, they're both sitting there next to the computer, but if he's on with his telephone and she's on with her computer, the speakers may be too close, and thus it's going to happen that way. So even though it's two different systems, the speakers are too close, just like you would do when you have a microphone in your microphone and you stand too close to the speaker that you're speaking out of, you get that reverb, really bad sounds. And the third reason, multiple computers with active audio in the same conference room. That's very likely in live meetings. If someone's doing this in a live meeting and they've got some people who are not in the room. So, as some clubs have done where they've used Zoom to bring people into their meetings.
Yeah.
So those are the times when that can get in the way. I'll talk about some of the roles and how each role is different, but I did want to see, is there any burning questions right now? Because we're going to get through this in about 5 minutes, and then we'll be able to see each other and ask lots of questions from the experts. So,
right. I just wanted to comment on what Jean was saying. When we did the DC meeting, we had several computers in the room, and Wendy Lord solved that problem because we just all plugged our computers, our headphones into our computers, and then we were okay. So you can have two computers in the same room. You just have to be sure that you've got your headphones on.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. We got a lot of great experts out there, and how did we learn this? Through the mistakes we've made. So you don't have to be an expert in all of this. You can just get on it and start practicing it and trying it. That's the best way to learn, just like we would encourage people to do on Pathways. Great. So let's see here. So the different roles that are going on that are most affected, I think the timer role is the one that's most affected. So coming up with a system that you can use to make it work. In one of our meetings, it worked really well. If everyone had the chat room off to the side, you could then just post in the chat room, green, yellow, red. Of course, that means the speaker has to look at the chat room to be able to see where they're at. A better thing I like, though, is having you pin the picture of the timer. So if you're the speaker, pin them to the top of your computer or to your computer so you always see their window while you're speaking. And so in that way, what you're going to be able to do is that you can then see them as they either hold up a sign or they can change their virtual background. But keep in mind, if you have the virtual background, and I will say had gotten some software, or Calvin Wong had done some work and had his background changed so that you could do the timer with the green, yellow, red. And it's even good to have a black one. So you've got black background, then you got a green background, yellow background, red background. And he was doing that yesterday in a meeting, and it worked out really well. So he sent me those colors that you can then save to your virtual background. And then when you need to pull it up, it's right there in your virtual background library. So those colors. And that's how you change it very quickly so that you can just go green, yellow, red. But again, just make sure that they can see the timer. That's the main thing. And of course, then the timer is going to keep track for the report. Is there any other issues that people can think of that are timer related that are different in here that they've been noticing that they might recommend?
Hey, Bart.
Yes.
People are in the chat noticing that you've stopped sharing, maybe?
Oh, have I?
Yeah, or the PowerPoint went black somehow. Just calling it out.
I can still see them.
Yeah, we can see you in the gallery speaking, but like can't see.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so your screen sharing is paused. Doesn't tell me how to unpause it. So that's a challenge. Okay, I can stop here. Wait, there it goes. Maybe that'll do it.
Jean, you were saying that you could give a demo of the.
Yeah, and I think Betty was doing it too.
Betty was doing a fabulous job of showing the timer.
Yeah, so I can do the same thing. What I can do is Betty's doing it, and I can do it as well. So what I've done is actually Betty and Jeff shared with me the cards that they used. And I can also kind of do this so that I'm not like weirdly distracting. All I'm doing is covering my camera right now. So we can move from red to green to yellow. Or I can do this when I'm not at the right time. And this is what we did for the contest yesterday. And we found that it was a lot less obtrusive than the timer, like sharing it, like in a big way. It just seemed really you know, scary or like super distracting. So up to y'all kind of how you want to do it, but I'm doing it with a virtual background. What I did is I just popped up in my virtual background window and I went from green to yellow to red.
Yeah, and some of you out there are playing with your virtual background, so I'm enjoying seeing some of the different options. And really all I have in that's left in the program is just going through each role and discussing what impact there is for each role, which there's not a whole lot of impact for each role. There is a role I would recommend adding to your various roles you've got, and that is something that I'm calling Zoom Meister or Zoom Master. And that's somebody who, just like the general evaluator, will evaluate how well are people using Zoom in here. Is anyone doing anything that's distracting, detracting, anything that you might give them as recommendations? Like I might see Kathy Moore's picture and say, Kathy, I love the background you've got there, but then one of the things was it made your face look kind of dark. And so you might want to adjust your own lighting on your face so I can see your face better. There, I saw when at some point you were brighter, but now you're kind of dark. And I can see Betty with her earth and in the background. So we can play with all of this. Just don't choose something that's going to be distracting from people. But that's what the Zoom Master can help us as we learn. So the Zoom Master can keep track of whether or not people are being attentive. All sorts of things that you can give feedback on. In one of the meetings where I was the Zoom Meister, I gave probably about 20 little bits of feedback to, one to each person about what they could do to enhance their experience for us as a group. So it's just what you're noticing, and that's something I'd recommend. Plus, perhaps just like I've got DJ being the one to keep track of the chat. Obviously, in your meetings, you're not going to have a whole lot of chat like we have in this particular meeting. But you might want to have somebody who's going to be responsible for keeping track of the chat. That could be a great role to give to your sergeant at arms because they usually don't have much to do during the meeting. And that would be a great role for them, is to be the chat master.
Bart, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I'm still seeing some chat about the timer role. So we're getting some questions about what if someone is using their cell phone, what tools are available for them to see the timer cues. And I'm seeing people are not quite sure where to find these backgrounds for the timer colors. Maybe someone could share how to do that.
Yeah, we can list that on the internet, on the website as well, because that's something that many clubs, like what Jean showed, many clubs are going to want to use that system. I love that system. I just looked at it and thought, wow, what great. I mean, it's so clear.
Bart, this is Wafae. For those who would like to keep it simple, here's what I'd like to suggest. I have a card here. Especially those who don't have the ability to change their background. So there are different ways to do this. People who want to keep it simple, they can use their signal cards that they have been using.
And you can hold it so close to your photo that it can take up the entire screen.
Yeah, I can hold it. That would even cover my face. Yeah, absolutely. You could do it that way. You could take pictures of a folder, anything that shows the colors, and you can show it on your screen.
And Wafae, if you don't mind, for those that are technologically savvy and want to use those PNG files, we'll ask our webmaster to post those on TMD55.
Right. Oh, absolutely. We're giving people options so they do what they're comfortable with.
Yeah. And like, as you all are hearing, there's lots of different ways that you could achieve this. We just want to find what works best for our individual clubs, like all of you do.
Okay, can I remind everyone to mute yourselves?
Yes.
Please. Yes. And so Bart, I'm sorry, just one more thing about the timer. Someone's still saying that when they're on their phone, they do not have access to seeing the timer cues. So what is your advice to that?
Well, let me see if well, we've got a couple people on here who may have been involved on this on their phone. I haven't been on a call on my phone. I find that's a little too difficult. Although if you do have your phone, you want to put it in a little holder probably versus holding it by hand. Because I did see that sometimes if you're holding it by hand, you're moving like this constantly, and that's very distracting. So if you're using your phone, do it that way. I don't have the answer for that. If someone out here